Emily worked at a small-town diner that was always full of noise, laughter, and the sound of plates clinking. People came in and out all day, talking loudly about their lives, arguing about sports, or gossiping about neighbors. In the middle of all this noise, Emily moved quietly between the tables, carrying trays of food and smiling softly at customers. Many people barely noticed her. They saw her as just another waitress, someone who brought food and refilled coffee cups. But Emily was not like the others. She had a special talent hidden deep inside her, a talent she never talked about. She loved music, especially the piano. When she was a child, she used to sit for hours at a small keyboard in her room, pressing the keys gently and trying to copy the songs she heard on the radio. She learned fast, and her parents always said she had magic in her fingers. But life changed. Her family struggled with money, and piano lessons became a luxury they could no longer afford. The keyboard was sold, and Emily slowly pushed her dream aside. Now she worked at the diner, making minimum wage and trying her best to keep her spirits high. She was polite to everyone, even when customers were rude or impatient. Some people laughed at her because she was shy and soft-spoken. They said she was too quiet or too slow, not knowing she moved carefully only because she didn't want to make mistakes. Emily didn't complain, and she didn't defend herself. She simply nodded, smiled, and kept doing her job. In the corner of the diner stood an old, dusty piano that no one played anymore. It was just a decoration, placed there years ago by the owner who believed it made the place look classy. Most people ignored it. To them, it was just a piece of furniture. But to Emily, it was something else entirely. Every morning, before the diner opened, she wiped the dust off the piano carefully. She touched the keys softly, just enough to feel them under her fingertips. She never pressed hard enough to make a sound. She didn't want anyone to hear. Sometimes she imagined what it would feel like to sit there and play a beautiful melody, filling the whole diner with music. She imagined the customers turning their heads, surprised, wondering where such a sound was coming from. But she always shook the thought away. It felt too big, too far from her reality. She was just a waitress, and people didn't expect anything more from her. Still, whenever she cleaned the piano, small memories came back. She remembered her mother humming in the kitchen while she practiced scales. She remembered her father clapping proudly after she finished a difficult song. She remembered how happy music once made her feel. Those memories warmed her heart, but also reminded her of what she had lost. Even with all this, Emily tried to stay positive. She believed that everyone had their own path, and maybe this diner was simply hers. She liked the routine, the familiar faces, the soft morning light coming through the windows as she set the tables. She tried to find beauty in small things, like the smell of fresh coffee or the sound of rain hitting the roof. But deep inside, a quiet part of her still longed for something more. The customers rarely saw this side of her. To them, she was just the quiet waitress who smiled politely and moved out of the way. They did not know that every time she glanced at the piano, her heart squeezed with memories and dreams she never spoke about. She hid all of that behind her calm expression. Even though the diner was loud and chaotic, Emily always felt like she lived in her own small world inside it. A world where music still mattered. A world where she could imagine herself sitting at the piano again, even if only in her mind. She didn't know that one day, this quiet dream would step out of her imagination and into reality. She didn't know that soon, the same customers who ignored her would watch her with wide eyes. She didn't know that the old piano in the corner would become the stage where her life would change. For now, she simply continued her day, taking orders, serving food, and quietly carrying a talent no one had seen yet. Emily always noticed the old piano in the corner of the diner, even when no one else cared about it. It stood there like a forgotten memory, covered in dust, its wooden frame scratched from years of being moved around. Most customers didn't even look at it. They were too busy eating, talking, or making jokes. To them, it was just an old decoration. But to Emily, it was the most interesting thing in the entire room. Every morning, before her shift started, she cleaned the tables, refilled the sugar jars, and checked the coffee machines. And then, almost like a secret habit, she walked toward the piano. She would pretend she was just wiping dust like part of her job, but the truth was, she wanted an excuse to be near it. She would run her fingers lightly over the keys, barely touching them. She never pressed down fully, afraid someone might hear even a tiny note. It felt like touching something powerful, something that belonged to a different life. When she was little, she had a small keyboard in her bedroom. It was cheap and missing 2 keys, but she loved it more than any toy. She remembered sitting cross-legged on the floor, trying to match the sounds from TV shows and songs on the radio. She wasn't perfect, but she was quick to learn, and her parents noticed. Sometimes her father came home tired from work, but he still sat beside her and listened. He would smile and say, "You have talent, kiddo." Those words stayed with her even years later, but things changed. The keyboard broke. Money was tight. Her mother got sick, and music slips away when life becomes too heavy. Lesson after lesson got canceled until they stopped completely. Emily never complained. She tried to be strong for her family, but her dream of playing music was slowly pushed into a quiet corner of her heart, the same way the old piano was pushed into the corner of the diner. Still, whenever she cleaned that piano, she felt something alive inside her. It was like the keys whispered memories to her fingers. Sometimes she imagined herself sitting on the bench, her back straight, eyes focused, hands moving confidently across the keys. She imagined the gentle echo of notes filling the diner. She imagined the world going quiet, listening, but then reality returned, the sound of customers entering, the boss calling her name, the clatter of dishes. She quickly stepped away, wiping her hands on her apron as if she had been doing something wrong. Some days, when the diner was completely empty, Emily allowed herself a tiny bit of freedom. She would press one key, just one. A soft, gentle note. It was so quiet that even she could barely hear it. But that one note was enough to bring back a flood of feelings. She remembered the way music used to calm her, excite her, make her feel strong and important. She wondered if she still had the skill, or if the years of silence had erased everything she once knew. The owner of the diner didn't mind the piano, but he didn't care about it either. He had bought it long ago from a yard sale because he thought it made the place look more homey. Since then, it had been nothing but a decoration, like an old picture frame or a forgotten vase. Customers sometimes placed their jackets on it. Kids touched the keys at random, making loud, messy sounds until their parents told them to stop. But no one ever truly played it. No one except Emily, quietly, secretly, in the softest way possible. There was something magical about knowing that a part of her past still existed in front of her, even if it was hidden under dust. Sometimes she wondered if the piano was waiting for her, if it was placed in that diner for a reason. Maybe life wasn't done with her dream yet. Maybe she wasn't meant to forget music forever, but Emily didn't dare believe such things too strongly. Dreaming felt dangerous, like giving herself hope she might not be able to hold. So instead, she kept the piano as a private comfort, a quiet reminder of who she used to be. Every day she cleaned it carefully, as if caring for it meant she was also caring for the small piece of her soul that still loved music. She never told anyone about her secret connection with it. People already thought she was strange or too quiet. She didn't need them laughing at her for loving an old instrument. She didn't know that soon. This dusty piano would no longer be just a memory. She didn't know that it would become the center of her life again, and that this forgotten corner of the diner would soon become the place where everything changed. The diner was buzzing louder than usual that Friday night. It was the kind of night when every seat was filled, every plate was stacked high with fries, and every customer seemed to be talking at the same time. Emily moved from table to table with her usual quiet focus, hoping the rush would end soon. But the moment the door swung open and a loud group walked in, she knew the night was about to get harder. They were a group of 5 friends or co-workers. She couldn't tell, but they carried a loudness that filled every corner. They laughed too hard, talked too loudly, and acted as if the whole diner existed just to entertain them. As they slid into a booth, Emily felt a small knot form in her stomach. She hoped someone else would serve them, but she was the closest waitress, and the boss gave her a quick nod. She walked over with her notepad, giving them her gentle smile. Before she could even speak, one of them elbowed the other and whispered loudly, "Oh look, they sent the shy one." Another snickered. "Careful, she might spill water on us." Their friends laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. Emily kept her smile, even though her cheeks burned. She had learned long ago that staying calm was easier than arguing. So she wrote down their orders while they mocked her voice for being too soft, and joked about how she looked like she belonged in a library, not a diner. She wanted to disappear, to run into the kitchen and hide until they left. But she kept working. As the evening went on, their behavior only got worse. They tapped their glasses impatiently, waved napkins in the air to get her attention, and made dramatic sighs if she didn't reach them in 2 seconds. Every time she walked away, more laughter followed. And she knew she was the joke. One of them even said loudly, "She probably can't do anything except carry plates." Another added, "Yeah, I bet she's never done anything impressive in her whole life." Those words stung more than she wanted to admit. They were wrong. Emily knew she once had a dream, a passion, something beautiful. But because she kept it hidden, to the world she looked like someone who had nothing special inside. As she brought them their food, one of the girls tapped the side of the dusty piano next to their table and laughed. "Hey, maybe she can play this thing." Imagine that. The group cracked up as if it were the funniest idea ever. Emily looked at the piano for a split second, her heart tightening. If only they knew. But she simply placed their plates down and stepped back quietly. The diner owner noticed the group, but didn't want to cause trouble on a busy night. So Emily handled it all alone, pretending their words bounced off her, even though each one landed sharply in her chest. She told herself it didn't matter. People like that mocked everyone. She just happened to be standing in their path tonight. Still, as she worked, she felt smaller and smaller, like their laughter was slowly shrinking her confidence. She wished she could hide behind the kitchen door for the rest of the shift. And yet, she also felt something else, a tiny spark of anger. Or maybe courage, buried deep inside. That spark grew when she overheard the owner suddenly say, "Our performer for the night just canceled." The words echoed through the diner. The customers groaned. The loud group joked that the night was getting even worse. Emily froze. She looked at the piano, then back at the owner, then at the rude group laughing at her again. Something inside her whispered, "This is your chance." She didn't know it yet. But this rough, painful night, the night when people made fun of her the most, was the night everything would begin to change. The night had barely settled into its rhythm when the diner owner's voice broke through the noise. He stood near the counter, rubbing his forehead in frustration, a phone still in his hand. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, loud enough that half the customers turned to look. Emily paused mid-step, her tray balanced carefully in her hands. Something was wrong, she could feel it. The owner sighed deeply and walked toward the center of the diner. "Sorry, everyone," he announced, trying to sound cheerful but failing. "Our performer for tonight just canceled. Family emergency." A wave of disappointment spread across the room. Friday nights at the diner were special. People came not only for the food but also for live music. It made the small-town place feel warm, lively, almost magical. Without music, the night already felt a little duller. Some customers groaned. Others murmured complaints. And of course, The rude group that had been teasing Emily couldn't resist adding their voices. One of them shouted, "Great! First horrible service, and now no music. What a night!" Their friends laughed loudly, drawing annoyed glances from nearby tables. Emily lowered her eyes, feeling the blame land on her, even though she had done nothing wrong. She continued delivering plates, trying to stay invisible. But then she heard something that made her stop completely. The owner sighed again and said to the staff, "I guess we'll just have to play some old playlist." Unless, he looked around with a tired expression, clearly searching for solutions, but finding none. "Unless someone here knows how to play." A strange silence fell over Emily, as if the world held its breath for her. She glanced at the piano, not in fear this time, but in longing. For a moment, she imagined herself sitting there, filling the room with the music she had locked away for so long. She could almost feel the keys under her fingers, warm and familiar. But then reality returned. She was a waitress. People laughed at her. Customers mocked her voice, her movements, her quiet nature. What would they do if she said she could play? They would laugh even harder. They wouldn't believe her. Still, a small voice inside whispered, "You've waited years for a moment like this." As she refilled coffee at a nearby table, she overheard the rude group again. "Imagine the quiet waitress trying to play music," one said. "She'd probably break the piano." Their laughter filled the air like needles. Emily's hands trembled as she set down the coffee pot. Something inside her shifted, something she had kept locked away for too long. The hurt mixed with courage, forming a strange, powerful feeling. She took a deep breath, wiped her palms on her apron, and approached the owner. He looked surprised to see her standing in front of him, her voice soft but steady. I can play," she said quietly. At first, he blinked as if he hadn't heard her right. "You can?" Emily nodded, though her heart raced in her chest. The owner raised an eyebrow. He had known her for years, but she had never mentioned anything about music. "Are you sure? There's a big crowd tonight." Across the room, the rude group noticed her talking to the owner and immediately burst into laughter. "What is she doing? Asking for a break because she can't handle the tables?" One joked. Emily took another breath. "I'm sure," she said, this time with more strength in her voice. The owner studied her for a moment, then sighed. "Well, we don't have another choice. If you can help save the night, go ahead." Emily felt the weight of the entire diner turn toward her as she slowly walked toward the piano. Her steps were quiet but filled with purpose. The rude group watched her with smirks on their faces, whispering jokes. Other customers looked confused, some curious, some doubtful. She reached the piano and placed her hand on its edge. It felt warm, familiar, like a lost friend welcoming her back. Emily took a seat, her heart pounding. No one knew it, yet not even Emily herself. But the moment she touched those keys, everything about the night, her life, and the way people saw her was about to change forever. Emily sat in front of the piano, and for a moment, the whole diner felt heavier than the air around her. She could feel every eye in the room resting on her back. Some were confused, some curious, and some, especially the rude group, were full of amusement, waiting for her to embarrass herself. But Emily didn't turn around. She kept her focus on the keys resting quietly in front of her, as if they were waiting for her to make the first move. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear alone, but from the weight of memories. She hadn't touched a real piano in years, yet her fingers still remembered the shape of the keys, the cool surface, the feeling of possibilities. She took a long, slow breath, hoping it would steady her heart. Behind her, the rude group kept whispering. One of them said loudly, "This is going to be good. I bet you hit one key and run away." Another snorted, "Maybe she thinks playing piano is like carrying plates. Just don't drop anything." Their laughter cut through the room, sharp and unpleasant. Emily closed her eyes. For the first time all night, She let herself block everything out, the noise, the jokes, the pressure, the doubt. She separated herself from the diner and stepped into her memories instead. She pictured her little keyboard back in her childhood bedroom. She pictured her mother sitting on the bed, humming along as Emily practiced. She pictured her father clapping proudly, saying she had magic fingers. She held onto that image. It gave her strength. When she opened her eyes again, she no longer felt small. She felt ready. She placed both hands gently on the keys, letting her fingertips rest there without pressing down. The piano was old, but it still had life inside it. She could feel it. It felt almost as if the instrument recognized her touch, like two old friends meeting again after years apart. The diner owner stood behind the counter watching her closely. The other waitresses paused their work and leaned against the counter, whispering to each other. Even the cook peeked through the kitchen window. A strange, expectant hush fell over the diner. Emily took another deep breath. This was her moment. Maybe the only one she would get. Then, right when she was about to play, the rude group shouted again. "Hey, quiet girl. Don't fall asleep on it. Hit something already." Their laughter echoed, but Emily didn't let it push her down this time. Instead, something inside her finally snapped in a different way, not in sadness, but in strength. She lifted her chin slightly. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. She pressed the first key. It was a soft note, almost too gentle to be heard. But it was clear, steady, and full of emotion, like a whisper that demanded silence. Several customers leaned forward, surprised by the sweetness of that single sound. Emily felt her confidence grow just a little. She played the next note. Then another. Slowly, a melody began to form, quiet at first, like a secret being shared. She let her fingers move naturally, as if they had been waiting years to dance again. The room shifted. The laughter faded. The rude group stopped talking mid-sentence. People who had been eating set down their forks. Couples stopped their conversations. Even children grew quiet. Emily didn't see any of this. She was too lost in the moment, too connected to the music flowing through her hands. She felt as if she had stepped out of her own body and was watching her younger self play with all the joy she once had. Her heart settled into the rhythm. Her fear melted into focus. Her doubts dissolved into the melody. This was no longer a waitress playing a dusty piano. This was a musician reclaiming her voice. What she didn't know was that within seconds, the entire diner would be spellbound, and that her life was about to take a turn she never could have imagined. The moment Emily's fingers truly began to glide across the keys, the entire diner seemed to change. It was as if someone had flipped a switch and drained all the noise from the room. The clatter of forks stopped. The kitchen sounds faded. And even the rude group who had been laughing nonstop just moments before fell silent without realizing it. The first notes were soft, but they carried a feeling that wrapped itself around every person in the diner. It wasn't just music. It was emotion, deep and honest, flowing straight from Emily's heart to the keys. Her fingers moved slowly at first, like someone remembering an old language. But within moments, her hands found their rhythm. It felt natural, familiar, like breathing. Emily didn't look up. She didn't dare. She kept her eyes on the keys, lost completely in the sound she was creating. And in that private space where only she and the music existed, something inside her began to rise, a confidence she had forgotten she could feel. The piano wasn't just an instrument anymore. It was the missing piece of her life she had finally found again. Her melody grew stronger, fuller. The old piano responded as if it had been waiting years for someone to treat it with this kind of love. Each note vibrated through the wooden floors and walls, reaching even the corners of the diner that usually stayed unnoticed. People who had been scrolling on their phones slowly looked up, their eyes softening. Couples who had been arguing paused and listened. Even the owner, who had been stressed just moments before, stood frozen behind the counter, his mouth slightly open. But the most shocking change happened at the rude group's table. The group who had mocked her, laughed at her, and joked about her abilities now sat still, their eyes fixed on her in disbelief. One of them whispered, "Is that really her?" Another shook their heads slowly, unable to speak. Their earlier laughter suddenly felt childish and embarrassing. The music Emily played was not complicated or loud. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was simple, pure, and unbelievably heartfelt. It sounded like memories, like hope, like someone gently opening a door to a part of their soul they had kept hidden for too long. Her pace quickened, her fingers moving more confidently now. She shifted into a part of the melody she had created years ago when she used to play for her mother. The notes rose and fell like a quiet conversation between her past and present. And as she played, she felt something inside her healing, like every note washed away a little bit of the pain she had carried all these years, for the first time in a long time. Emily wasn't the quiet waitress who blended into the background. She wasn't the shy girl people ignored or teased. She wasn't someone trying to avoid attention. She was a performer, a storyteller, a musician with something powerful to say. The diner, so used to noise, became a sanctuary of silence. People leaned in, not wanting to miss a single moment. A few customers even felt tears prick their eyes, moved by the raw truth in the melody. It was rare to witness someone accidentally reveal their true self so beautifully. Emily finally reached the part of the song that soared the highest, a series of notes she used to be proud of as a child. And to her surprise, she still remembered them perfectly. Her fingers flew lightly yet gracefully, as if the years without music had never existed. She felt free, glowing from the inside out, and when she touched the final note, letting it linger softly in the air, the entire diner held its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence that followed was deeper than any applause could have been. Emily lifted her hands from the keys, her chest rising with a shaky breath. She began to turn around slowly, anxiously, having no idea what she was about to see. She didn't know yet that the look on every face would be the same: awe, disbelief, and the realization that the quiet waitress had just shown them something extraordinary. For a heartbeat, the diner stayed frozen in silence, as if time itself had paused to honor the final note Emily had played. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, unsure of what was about to happen next. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. She almost wanted to stand up and run back into the kitchen before anyone reacted. But then something happened that Emily didn't expect at all. A single clap echoed through the diner, sharp, clear, and full of emotion. It came from an elderly man near the window, someone who had been eating alone with his newspaper. He stood up as he clapped, his eyes shining with admiration. Then another clap joined his, and another, within seconds. The entire diner erupted into applause, loud, warm, and overflowing with disbelief. People stood from their seats, some even whistling, others cheering her name even though she never told them. The sudden wave of appreciation washed over Emily so powerfully that for a moment she had to close her eyes to keep her tears from spilling. Same customers who hadn't noticed her all week now looked at her like she was someone unforgettable. Even the tired night shift workers clapped from the back, their faces lit up with surprised smiles. Couples held onto each other, amazed. Parents whispered to their children, telling them to remember this moment. But the most unexpected reaction came from the rude group. They sat completely stunned, their earlier arrogance shattered. The girl who had mocked her voice stared with wide eyes, biting her lip as if trying to swallow her embarrassment. One of the guys who joked about her being too quiet now looked down at his table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Another whispered, barely audible, "We were so wrong." Their smirks were gone. Their laughter was gone. All that remained was the quiet realization that they had misjudged someone far greater than they understood. Emily finally stood up from the piano bench, her knees a little shaky. She looked at the crowd, at the smiles, the applause, the admiration, and her heart felt unbelievably full. The owner approached her with an expression she had never seen on him before, pride mixed with amazement. "Emily, why didn't you tell us?" he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Emily gave a shy smile. "I didn't think it mattered." "It matters," he said firmly. "It matters a lot." A few customers stepped forward to compliment her. "That was beautiful. You have a gift." "Sweetheart, I felt that in my heart." Even the rude group approached slowly, looking like they were walking toward their own guilt. Their leader cleared his throat awkwardly. Hey, we, didn't know you could do that. We're sorry for earlier." Emily didn't respond with anger. She simply nodded. She didn't need their approval anymore, not after showing the entire room who she truly was. As the applause finally began to fade, people started talking excitedly about her performance. Some speculated if she had been trained professionally. Others wondered how long she had been hiding such talent. A few even asked if she would play again someday. For the first time, Emily didn't shrink from the attention. She felt seen, truly seen, for something that mattered. Something that belonged to her. The diner, once just a place where she served tables, suddenly felt like the stage where she had rediscovered herself. And as she stepped away from the piano, her heart still glowing from the music and the moment, she realized something she'd almost forgotten how to feel: hope. In the days that followed, everything in Emily's world seemed to shift quietly at first, then all at once. What happened that night wasn't just a moment. It was the spark that lit up an entirely new path for her. The morning after her performance, the diner buzzed with excitement. Regular customers came in earlier than usual, hoping to see the waitress who played like an angel. Some brought flowers, others left small notes on the counter thanking her for the music. A few even asked if she would play again that night. Emily blushed every time someone mentioned her performance, still struggling to believe that the applause she heard was real and not imagined. But the biggest surprise came when the owner called her into his office. Emily walked in nervously, expecting to be assigned extra shifts or maybe even scolded for taking a risk. Instead, the owner smiled a warm, proud smile she had never seen on him before. "Emily," he said, folding his arms, "I think it's time we move that piano out of the corner." She blinked. "Move it?" "We're putting it in the center, near the window," he said. "And if you're willing, I'd like you to perform here every Friday night." Emily's heart skipped. "Me? Who else?" He laughed. "People came back this morning just to ask about you." She felt tears prick her eyes. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she should cry, smile, or hug him. She settled for a soft, breathless, "Thank you." Words spread faster than she ever expected. Someone had recorded a small part of her performance and posted it online. Within 2 days, it had thousands of views. People commented saying her music felt pure, healing, and unbelievably emotional. Some asked where the diner was, wanting to hear her in person. Others said she should release her own music. Emily couldn't believe it. She went from being invisible to being someone people wanted to see, not because she tried to impress anyone, but because she finally let herself be who she really was. Her co-workers treated her differently too. The cook, who never said much beyond grunts, now smiled when she walked by. The younger waitress asked for lessons. Even the rude group returned a week later, not to mock her this time, but to listen. They sat quietly in the corner, respectful, humbled, and a little ashamed. When Emily finished playing that night, they approached her again, not with awkward apologies this time, but with gratitude. "You changed the whole vibe of this place," one of them admitted. Emily simply nodded, accepting their words with grace. She didn't hold on to their cruelty, nor did she need their approval. She had grown past that. With each passing week, Emily's confidence blossomed. She started composing new pieces, soft emotional melodies inspired by her own journey. She stayed after shifts to practice, her fingers rediscovering skills she thought she had lost forever. The more she played, the more alive she felt, and one evening, as she played for a packed diner full of smiling faces, she realized something important. The dream she thought was lost hadn't disappeared. It had simply been waiting, quietly, patiently, until she was ready to return to it. Emily no longer felt like the shy waitress who blended into the background. She felt strong, talented, and full of purpose. The diner wasn't just her workplace anymore. It was the place where she found her courage, her voice, and her future. And as the final notes of her song drifted through the diner, a thought settled warmly in her heart. This was only the beginning.